Hello and welcome to Words Unwritten, where we talk about how to have a greater impact in the world and your business with a kick-ass mindset and thoughtful communication. I'm your host, Neno, copywriter, ghostwriter, poet, and the owner of The Writer's Rebellion. Today, I'm joined by Emily Pennystone. She is the founder of Master Your Fate, a coaching program that combines personalized one-on-one coaching, group sessions, and science-backed methods using neuroplasticity to make lasting changes in yourself so you can change your life to be the life of your dreams. And in my opinion, it's the best mindset program for entrepreneurs, but I'm biased because I am one of the OGs. So, Emily, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. Why don't you tell people a bit about yourself and such?
Thank you so much for having me. I've just been so excited seeing all the work that you're doing in the world and seeing how your business has expanded and grown. And yes, you are one of my OG members of Master Your Fate when I very first launched now a couple years ago now. And the work that I do is really geared towards the reason why it's geared towards entrepreneurs, let me say that they're my most favorite people to work with because entrepreneurship inherently asks you to look at yourself because all your blocks, all your limiting beliefs are going to be flung into your face because you're constantly stepping into discomfort, stepping into visibility, having to problem solve, having to do things that you've never done before. And so I love working with entrepreneurs on their mindset because it is just such a ripe, like, landscape for personal growth and development. And so my work is really based around the deep inner belief systems. And we start with like mindset. And I feel like that, I do talk a lot about mindset and a lot about, how we can how we can shift our mindset to, have more success, abundance, flow in our businesses and these things. But when all that work starts trickling down and asking these deeper questions of like, what do I believe? And what do I believe about myself? And where is my sense of self-worth? And that work is really what we get into in Master Your Fate, the deep core foundational work that then when you really are in alignment, when your beliefs are in alignment with your values and you feel that cohesion within you, then what you build flows a lot easier. It's kind of like laying the
Yes.
foundation. So that's a bit about my work and what I love doing and why I love working with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that the aspects of Master Your Fate that I found like some of the pieces that I found most transformative for my business were just transformative for myself and transformed all sorts of aspects of my life as well. And when I started, I had done therapy, I read a lot of books, and I had told you, I'm like, I feel like I've come a long way, but I feel like there's something there that I can't pinpoint and I don't know what it is or how to break through that. And so many of the things with those like deep subconscious things, we can't scratch the surface with. And so one of the things you did with us was what I called building your mind palace, right? Where you go through these meditations, and within this meditation you build like this mind palace, and then you have like um one thing you're addressing each week, but you're doing it within this safe space and this like imaginative zone. And then like journaling your ahas as you have them, and then working through those things with you one on one, and like going into that subconscious realm and seeing like, you know, okay, I have some limiting beliefs around like black and white thinking, right? Where the one thing that I found really incredible was both and. It was like this most simple thing you ever said. And it was just like, it was so huge because
Mhm.
I think, when you come from a space of working that 9 to 5 under a, hierarchical kind of structure, you think that, okay, I have to work hard and work my butt off to get my basic needs met. You have to have this in order to get this, that you can't have work life balance and make a lot of money. And you helped us realize that we could have both. Like, the only limits are the limits within our own imagination. And so, what are some other kind of simple, maybe, or surprising, like, transformations that you've seen with your people?
Mm. Uh, well, first of all, I love hearing that reflection. It's so interesting how each one of these like amazing women that go through my program, there's like a different nugget that is like the life-changing piece, and it seems like it's just always different. And I'm just like always so amazed and so grateful that there's just this like spread of things in the program that people can really like connect with. So I love hearing that reflection. But some of the amazing things that I've seen people come away with, really the big overarching takeaway that most of my students come away with is this restored sense of self-trust, where we really do a lot of work on understanding like the negative self-talk, understanding those belief systems and why we're so hard on ourselves, reconnecting to our inner child to start bringing that compassion back into our relationship with ourselves and not being so hard on ourselves all the time. And when my students are able to kind of start practicing this loving self-talk and this compassionate curiosity, it starts just inherently restoring self-trust. It just is kind of automatic, because that all that negative self-talk, all that being really hard on yourself, you're the worst, you're that, being so mean to yourself, having these like impossible expectations and then shame spiraling, all that stuff
Yeah.
really goes right directly against your sense of self-trust, because you're bullying yourself essentially.
Right.
And but the interesting thing is when we start releasing, first of all, understanding why those things are there. They're there as like a coping mechanism and trying to keep us safe, trying to replay dynamics. But when we understand why those are there, then it's just like self-trust like floods back in. Trust with ourselves, relationship with ourselves is our normal state of being. It is the
Mhm.
being that we will go back to when we remove the things that are blocking that. It's kind of just like you will inherently, that will grow and that will strengthen. So self-trust is a big, big, big one that people come away with. And along with that is just a connection to the intuition that is like just
Mhm.
very closely related to when you're restoring your sense of self-trust. And the thing that's really interesting about intuition, it is so essential for us as entrepreneurs. So much of like building a business really is just a million decisions that you're making on top of each other. And it can be really challenging when you are giving the authority of that decision making over to other people and other systems. Well, they think that that's a good decision, so I'm going to do that, as opposed to this feels good in an alignment with me. So the restoration of intuition, I feel like, is such a powerful aspect of just building a sustainable, and I mean sustainable in the sense of like it's good for you, business as an entrepreneur.
Right. So you're not
Yeah.
burning the candle at both ends like many of us do for the first, hot minute of our businesses. The one
Yeah.
thing, I'm so glad you brought up the inner child thing, because both the inner child and compassionate curiosity, those two were also really, really big for me. And I had, like, when I said, like, there's just that one thing, it was the inner child. The one thing I couldn't pinpoint was the inner child stuff. And I didn't have a particularly difficult childhood. I was very privileged. And so I'm like, well, why the frick do I have this? Like, why is there why is this the thing that's holding me back? And so when we went through all the stuff, I remember I was doing the meditation, and I'm like sitting there sobbing in the meditation, you know? And but it's just that, like, connection with the inner child, and somehow making that connection helped me find that sense of self compassion and building that self trust. And I don't know why, but it did it and it worked. And actually, I wanted to show you something. I went through old photos and I found this picture of me and I wanted to share it with you. It's me as a kid with my grandmother's old typewriter. And so now I have it by my desk and just remember, like that connection because it was so
Yeah,
impactful for me to just connect with that little person. And it almost makes me want to be, it made me want to be more compassionate to myself, more kind to myself, and connect more with the heart of myself instead of being overthink because big overthinker. I'm a Gemini. I'm a big overthinker. And so, that self-trust I feel like is more grounded in the heart space. That intuition is there more in the heart space. And it helps, remembering her in there reminds me that I need to stay connected and stay grounded, So I was like,
absolutely.
yeah. So that
Yes,
was
and I
really big.
love that I love that you have that picture. That actually is, like, kind of, I know in Master Your Fate, there was a point where I was like, find a picture of, like, little you. There I have my picture that I, like, have in my head anytime I think of little Emily. But it's so easy when we're thinking of ourselves as us today, as this sophisticated adult that should have all of her shit together. It's really easy to be hard on ourselves because you're
Yeah.
just like, "Yeah, whatever, you're the worst, whatever your narrative is that runs through your head." But when you're really considering little you and your needs, and even if you had a very privileged childhood, we all go with some needs being unmet and some
Mhm.
areas of our life where we weren't seen. And we create coping mechanisms because of that. And they help us survive when we're little. They help us survive, even maybe if it's not literal survival, but emotional survival. It could
Mhm.
be finding a sense of self worth as a child. That was a big one for me. And then those coping mechanisms become maladaptive when you're older and turn into your mindset blocks. And so being
Yes.
able to really reconnect to that version of you, I think creates the space for compassion, like you were saying, where you're like, it's easy to be mean to me today, but I don't want to be mean to her. She doesn't deserve that, little me,
Yes.
And it creates this, like, space. And I actually, especially for mothers, and we both are mothers, like, that channel is, like, very well defined, like the compassion and kindness to the little one. And so I especially enjoy working with the mompreneurs because there is that connection inherently that we have to children that can be really easily applied to the self. So that I'm like, you already are good at this. You already know how to do this. You just got to, like, turn that to yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and,
Mhm.
it's also with, I lost my train of thought. Hold on. I'll get back there.
It's out there. It's okay. It happens.
Yeah, it's a very ADHD day. But the compassionate curiosity portion as well, because I think with so many of us, especially those socialized as female, we develop that very harsh narrative. We treat ourselves worse than we would ever treat anyone else. We speak to ourselves way worse than we would our kid or our best friend. In fact, I saw something recently that's like, if you had a friend that spoke to you the way you spoke to you, would you be friends with that person?
Yeah,
And that was like
probably
yeah,
not.
like that's yeah. And so one of the things that with that compassionate curiosity component of things was that whenever I would look at how I can improve on things, or where I could learn something, what's going on here, in really investigating how to move forward, it was always with a sense of judgment. It was always with, you're not doing good enough in this, so you need to do something better. What are you fucking up with? It was always very harsh. And so then approaching it with compassion and curiosity instead of harsh judgment and critique was really transformative for my mindset, especially in growing as an entrepreneur, because you have those instances with clients or with like business mistakes, and you're like, I should have done this, I should have done that, and it can be very easy to beat yourself up. Um, Especially as you're like recovering from like financial trauma and you're trying to get your financial shit together. Or you're like, one of the things I struggled with was I was so afraid to inconvenience people or annoy people, so I wouldn't follow up with people, and
Mhm.
like overcoming those little struggles that really hold you back in your business and you don't even identify it. You can't even like you don't even know how impactful those things are. So coming with that compassionate curiosity and changing that narrative, it was so helpful in talking myself through those moments and trying
Mm.
to find ways of more positive expansion. So that
Mm.
was
That's
really
so
awesome.
powerful. Yeah. It's so interesting, like, because I do have like a thematic thing that the women that come into my program are feeling is really stuck, right? And usually it's that kind of judgment spiral where they're like, they've got these dreams, they want to accomplish and do these big things, but they're like, why am I so stuck? And I always like, so anytime anybody comes to me and they're like, I feel stuck, I'm like, I can help you. Like, you are my favorite people. I love helping people who feel stuck, because usually to me, when there's somebody who's stuck, it's because they have a vision, a calling, an inspiration, whatever you might want to call it, like a North Star that is just singing to them and pulling at them. But then they have these limiting beliefs that are pulling this way. And
Yeah.
so so now they're stuck in limbo because they're having something that's like
Oh, you
anchoring them
froze.
down and something else that's calling them up. And and so I always like to tell these people as they're coming into my world, I'm like, it's not about like judging where you're at and judging yourself for being stuck. You're stuck because you're being pulled in two different directions. It's about understanding this thing that's anchoring you and not rejecting it. We're not cutting it off. We are pulling up the line, putting the anchor in the boat. We are reintegrating and reframing these limiting beliefs that are holding you back, and you're going to be able to float right up onto that star. And the thing about the judgment bit and the compassionate curiosity is, it's just so interesting how so much of, how does this want to come through? So much of us as entrepreneurs being called to bigger things is centered around visibility. It's centered around showing up in a bigger way. And that might be literally being visible, say on a social media platform, or it might be being visible as like in cold outreach or marketing yourself or building a website. There is this like expansion that needs to happen. And when we're quite literally judging ourselves and being like, you're the worst, why did you do this, why did you just, that is contractive. That is like
Hmm.
keeping you small. And so you're like, on one hand, you're like, I got to be big and take up space and be visible. But internally, I am crushing myself down. I am keeping myself small. It feels impossible. Of course it feels impossible. You're two opposite things,
Right.
and or that are pulling in two different directions. And so when we start to implement this compassionate curiosity, this loving self-talk, like all these things that are expansive, it really supports the, like, as a byproduct almost, being visible in your business, because you've created expansiveness within yourself. You've stopped that really contractive keeping yourself small.
Hmm.
Like, because we get so caught up on, am I doing the right strategy? Do I have the right messaging? Am I doing the right technique? Do I have the right, systems in place? And all those things are important, but you could have the best tech, the best marketing strategy, the best systems. And if you are crushing yourself down with self-judgment and with negative self-talk, it's going to feel impossible to like grow and show up visibly. Like, who you are being, I think, makes up like 80-90% of it. And the rest is like what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
So
No,
I love that you kind
absolutely.
of highlighted that. And I think it is just like such a big component of all of it for us.
Yeah, and I think, with you working with a lot of female entrepreneurs, I think a lot of us have this feeling of we have to make ourselves smaller. We're always taught since we were children that we take up too much space. And I know that was big for me. I remember telling you the one narrative that would go into my, like, would repeat in my head all the time was always too much and never enough.
Mm.
And that like haunted me for so long, because I have a very big personality. I'm very loud. I'm very expressive. And so I always felt like I was too much, and still yet not good enough, not smart enough, not talented enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough, like all of the things. And so like that has that sense of like, you feel small and you feel like you have to constantly make yourself feel smaller. And then you come into entrepreneurship and you're like, "Oh my god, now I have to be big and I have to be seen and I have to take up space in order to be successful." And it's so uncomfortable. And 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 that idea, also like that, the using that idea of expansive and contracted, what makes you feel big, what makes you feel small, to navigate decisions when you're so used to making the decision that is the least, has the least resistance, has the least pushback from your boss or from your parents or from your partner. We're always making decisions that are, okay, well, how is everything going to work out the smoothest? No matter how it makes me
Mm.
feel, how am I going to get the least amount of backlash?
Mm.
And so then navigating with that sense of what makes me feel big and what makes me feel small, instead of, well, how is this person going to think of me? Or how's this going to, it made a huge impact in going from that space of trying to be small all the time, trying to keep myself small all the time, and then embracing, like going through the process of embracing being seen, and having boundaries and being assertive, and things like that, and reaching out to people and all of those things, and then doing it in a way that made me feel good and not made me feel gross, because there were some
Mm.
methods of business that, like, overall will be talked about, and then some people it just doesn't resonate with, and you have to find the way, like, you could still do the same thing but you do it in a different way that resonates with you. So even if that one business tip seems like a good idea, and everyone tells you to do that one business tip, if that business tip makes you feel small, how can you investigate that to make yourself feel bigger, to feel expansive and to feel aligned? So those, like, kind of shifts, were really impactful during our coaching thing. And I mean, like,
Mm.
I think I told you this. I had made more progress, like, obviously therapy's great, you know, but I had made more progress in my mindset and my mental health, in my healing journey, in 6 weeks of your program than I had made seeing 3 different therapists.
Mm.
And so it was so hugely impactful. And I think one of the things I think is what made it so impactful is the structured way of doing it. And for some reason, I need that structure. And like, you go to point A, then we grow to point B, then we grow to point C, and then evolving over time in a structured way to hit all of the points. Because sometimes you don't know what's going on, you don't know what's holding you back. So going through all of your 12 phases helped me identify what aspects were actually holding me back in a much more rapid fashion. So I just went on a very long spiel of that.
I loved it. I was just like, oh, it just means the world to me. And it truly is like Master Your Fate is like a compilation of all the things that, like, all the research, all the studying,
Mhm.
all the things that I have done in my life that I'm like, this is the powerful stuff. And it's interesting because I always say, like, Master Your Fate, it's not for the faint of heart. Like, anybody who's gone through that program is a freaking badass. Like, it is, it is packed full. Like, it is so packed full, not in like a you're going to have to study for hours and hours, but it's just really going to get to like the heart of the matter. Like, and you're going to
Yes.
find those blocks and you're going to go deep. But I love that you kind of highlighted the structure of it, because it was very intentional to start at the foundational inner things. Well, we first start with nervous system regulation. How do we take care of our nervous system through all of this? And then the core foundational inner work, and then it works to externalize. And we start
Yeah.
like the relationship with the self, and then it externalizes. And towards the end of the program, we're talking about communication and relationship and boundaries and how these things start externalizing in our life. And it really is just, it creates such a powerful foundation then to just show up not only in your business, but in your relationships, in your partnerships, in your friendships, in the work that you're doing, in community. And yeah, and it just, I don't know, it feels so good to hear your reflection on all of it and like what was impactful for you, because it truly came from like a place that was so raw inside me, and so it was just such a, I don't know, I raw is a good word. I was just so vulnerable when I created it. I was so raw, I was so broken open, and I just really, really was like, this is the stuff. This is, if I could put everything together, that is like the pathway to reconnect, to rebuild your relationship with yourself, to rebuild that sense of self-trust, to restore loving self-talk within you, to really ultimately stand in your own personal power, instead of like us very empathetic people tend to be very much people pleasers, and we're constantly
Mhm.
giving our power away, and it's really hard to build a business when you're giving your power away. So to
Yes.
be able to like really reclaim your power as like a sovereign being, so it really is just so deeply passionately like um something that I just so believe in, and I've seen it impact so many people. And I was just like so grateful to have you were just always such a like bright, sparkly rainbow of
Thank
light
you.
in our group. And it was so magical, and something that really I feel like has developed as the years have gone by, and as I've done more and more launches of Master Your Fate, is the group element of the program. And like I've seen some like incredible friendships build, and having this like support system, and that really has like evolved and grown. And now like in more recent cohorts, there's like we have like reunions, and we do things like this because they're like my friends, like I want to hang out, I want to connect with each
Yeah.
other, and that's like really sweet and special. And the group element of the program also allows the program to be like kind of like semi customizable. So we go through these 6 group calls, and I don't have like a predetermined like what those calls are going to be about. I like intuitively go with what is the needs within the group. And then we like customize those calls to what this cohort is really needing. And it's been interesting. There's been like different thematic things. There's been certain cohorts that have been much more business oriented. Others, there was one that was like all about embracing like your wild woman. It was really powerful and really amazing. And I was like, let's go. Like, this is what the need is in the group. So that's another thing that I love, like the structure of it, like you were saying. And I've tried to really build it in so it's not this like static thing. It really is this like living organism that kind of morphs and flexes around what the needs of the people in it are. So that's been really fun for me too, also like leading it, because it's different every time.
Yeah, and with, one of the things that I think is so undervalued in the entrepreneur community is community. Because if we're working a normal 9 to 5, we have coworkers, we have a boss, we have people who are within the same system, going about the same life, doing the same thing 40 hours a week as us. We have somebody who's like, if you hate your job, I bet Becky does too, and you guys can vent together, right?
Mm.
And then you go into entrepreneurship, and for a lot of us, we're the first entrepreneurs in our family. We're the black sheeps. We're the weirdos who think that we can make something out of nothing and make a whole ass living out of it. And a lot of times, throughout the beginning of the process, at least, you get a lot of resistance and backlash from the people closest to you that you love and respect. and they're like, well, maybe this isn't for you. Well, I don't know, like most businesses fail. Like they throw all those scarcity thoughts and those limiting beliefs at you while you're already trying to overcome all of those limiting beliefs. So by having any sort of group of people who are entrepreneurs that are along the same journey as you are, going through the same transformation, going through the same hurdles as you, it gives you that sense of community and support, and like these people understand it too. So when you're having a hard time overcoming this mindset hurdle or overcoming this business struggle, you have another person there who's like, I remember when I did that too. You know what I learned, or what helped me, and you can support each other. And then also be there to really celebrate your wins, because like sometimes you make have a big win in your business and your family's like, oh, cool. So you're going to be able to pay this and do this now, and you're going to be steady now. Like, are you sure this is going to be steady work for you now? Like, they'll throw extra of those limiting beliefs and they'll literally rain on your parade, and it's all out of love. It's just they don't understand this isn't their life. And so having that group of people is actually can be, I found, like one of the most supportive pieces for your business. And in
Mm-hmm.
any way that takes, whether you have a bestie that you met on LinkedIn who you guys chat about entrepreneurship with, or you have a whole group of people that you are close to and you can rely on, who may be all around the country, that are going through that, it's so pivotal on the success of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. Like, if, there's that saying, like, you're the sum of the five people closest to you, and if there are five people that like are scared of entrepreneurship, it's going to feel really challenging to you. And so
Mhm.
that's like one reason I'm like so grateful for this like online education space and everything like that, because it is so much more accessible to surround yourself by community. And it is really important to surround yourself by people who are farther along than you. Or I really, actually, I would like to amend that statement, in all stages, because there is something really, really valuable about being around people that maybe are a few steps behind you in business or whatever, because it allows you to step into a role of like authority, a role of being able to teach. And there's nothing like teaching that really drives it home for you. So surrounding yourself by people who are ahead of you, people who are maybe a few steps behind you in building their business is so, so valuable. And that actually is going to be, I have some exciting things that aren't really like solidified yet and ready to actually be like launched or talked about in my business, but it is going to be very community oriented. And I'm really, really excited to create that and share that in the world so that there can be a lot more of this and finding that support that really expands you. Because there's that, because if you're around a bunch of people that are like, how does this work? I don't think this can work. You're not going to be able to do this. That's going to impact you. And if you're around a bunch of people who are doing stuff, you're like, if they can do it, I can do it. It expands you. And that's kind of been
Yeah.
thematically what we've been talking about today, is just like how important it is to do that work of allowing yourself to expand, allowing yourself to take up space. Um, it is just so, so important as business owners, as entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that point you said about, having people within your community that are in all different levels, because yeah, you can step into a leadership position and with somebody and help guide them through a struggle, and it helps solidify that lesson in your mind. And also it shows you how far you've come, because then you can reflect like, oh,
Yes.
I remember when I was having that same struggle that feels like a lifetime ago. And then you can think, oh my gosh, that person that I was at that point would look at me now in awe. And you can truly appreciate because when you're one of my favorite sayings that I made up was, it's hard not to be lost in the sauce when you are the sauce. So having another person in a phase that you were in a year ago helps you to kind of pull back from your current reality and see the whole picture of things and see
Yeah.
your overall journey and be grateful for all the steps that you took to get to where you are now, and see more of that hope at the end of the tunnel, because we have we always have that guidepost that we move. You know, we're never just
Mm-hmm.
here. We're like, great, I'm here now, so I'm going to move it there. You know, and we
Mm-hmm.
put it farther out, and so we're always seeing like, okay, well, I just have to get to that, and this is my next growth point. And then we don't always stop and see like, look how far we've come, and celebrate those
Yeah.
wins as well. And so I think having that, you see, have people who are ahead of you in the journey, and you can see that what else is possible. You know, I know in some of the communities, I never thought it would be possible to make, you know, a certain amount of money in, you know, as a writer, you know, because you always hear writers are starving artists, right? And stuff like that. To be a, you know, to have make $30,000 a month as a writer, like that, just like I'm like, that wasn't even in my reality. But being in these copywriting groups, um, helped me see that that was possible. But then also
Mm-hmm.
being there to support other people helped me appreciate where I was at as well. And so, like I said, getting in the groups, you know, finding your people is so impactful. So,
Mm-hmm.
before we sign off, what is one piece of advice you would give an entrepreneur struggling with a scarcity mindset or limiting beliefs right now? Like something
Mm.
that they can take right off this podcast and change their life.
Struggling with scarcity mindset and limiting beliefs specifically. One piece of advice. Let me see what wants to come through.
I know, big question.
That's a
No
big one.
pressure.
I'm like, we have another hour. No, those are like really, really favorite things for me to talk about. I think the big thing, the biggest starting point that I ask a lot of people when they're really struggling with feeling like very limited is to try to access kind of it's what I call the observer state, but it's kind of like your scientist mode where you're neutral and you're observing what's going on. When, like what you were mentioning earlier, a lot of times we're engaging with ourself very not neutral, very biased and very judgmental. Like anything we're noticing, oh, you're the worst, you're doing that again, you're this, you're that,
Hmm.
you know. If you can access this observer state where your only point is just to notice with neutrality what's coming up and what's going on, that can allow you the spaciousness to be like, oh, interesting, I'm seeing a pattern. When I don't get 8 hours of sleep, I feel a lot of negative self-talk that morning, and that starts me down. Like there's so much room that you can start seeing patterns, loops, like similarities when you're able to access that kind of like scientist mode. So I always start my people off with noticing. Like, what can you notice? Journaling is great. If you don't like journaling, doing voice memos is great, stream of consciousness, to just start like noticing what is actually going on in there. And then the one little piece that I'm going to say is all of those systems, the things, the parts of you that you kind of like can't stand, maybe these mechanisms, coping mechanisms that you engage in or bad habits, all of them are there to try to keep you safe. And the thing is that at one point in time, they probably were actively keeping you safe in some way, whether it was just bringing you comfort or a sense of control or even just a sense of familiarity. And then they became maladaptive, where they're no longer like supporting your best like state of well-being. But recognizing that these things that we like fight with ourselves about and don't like about ourselves ultimately are interested in keeping us safe and helping us survive, instead of like trying to like torture us and trying to make ourselves suffer. That reframe is really powerful, because when you understand the motivation behind the said behavior, pattern, limiting belief, like why is it there? Why is it hanging around? What is the intent and motivation behind it? If you can understand that, you can replace it with something that has a better outcome for you. You know, so if you are feeling out of control, and when you feel out of control, let's say you really like to comfort eat, or you like to just like binge scroll on your phone or something because you're feeling out of control, recognizing that, okay, I'm trying to create a sense of familiarity, a sense of safety, a sense of comfort. that is the motivation. What are other things that are more in alignment with my values that give me a sense of comfort, that give me a sense of familiarity? So I'm going to stop there because I could keep going, keep going. So observer state, notice it, and also recognize that these systems are trying to keep you safe. And when you can understand the motivation behind them, you can start shifting them. So that's what I would say to that
Yes.
question.
That is fantastic advice. So, thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Emily, for joining me. The links for everything Emily and Master Your Fate related will be in the description. So, go check her stuff out. I promise you will not regret it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and review, and do all of the things. Your support is life giving. And most importantly, remember, words are powerful. So, go out there, make some magic, and let's start a revolution.